Welcome back. This is Brighter Morning with Bo, and I'm Bo Tiwari. And our first guest this morning is Mr. Kevin Ramnarine, an energy consultant and former Minister of Energy in Trinidad and Tobago. So we talked with him this morning. Good morning, Kevin.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Dr. Tiwari. Good morning, listeners.
Okay, how are you? How
I'm
things?
good. I'm good. Yeah, good as good as one could be in this COVID environment.
It's tough, I mean, I'm very fearful of being outside and among people in which you don't know what their status is. It is a problem. One has to be cautious. Um,
Certainly,
Before
yeah.
we get into energy matters, I mean, a lot of people are anti. Some people, a good percentage of the population is anti-vax. But why do you think there is such a significant degree of vaccine hesitancy that persists? I mean, I know this is not a. I know you're not
No,
a.
I'm very happy to opine on that because it has bothered me greatly.
Yeah.
Um, when the vaccines were made available to the public, I was one of the first persons to go to the Racket Center in Tacarigua and get vaccinated, and I was fully vaccinated by June 2021. I mean, we grew up knowing that you have to have your measles and your polio and so on to go to primary school. And I think there is that 55% of the population which is vaccine hesitant because clearly the government's vaccination drive has hit a wall and it's crawling at about, according to the Prime Minister, 0.1 to 0.2% of the population per day. It has a lot to do with people's lack of trust, one, in the system. It has a lot to do with the anti-vax messages coming through social media, which are imported messages. And the third factor I would say is that I think the government's communication campaign could have been done differently. I think that the Ministry of Health in particular has to reassess how it communicates with the population. Because I like you have lectured at the University of the West Indies, and there are some people who the minute they see a graph, they get turned off. And so I think this whole bombardment with all these graphs and so on, and all this scientific jargon from doctors and so on, that communications approach has to be reassessed because it is obvious now that if we don't get that 45 to 46% up to the 70s, we are going to have hundreds, possibly thousands more people dying in this country in 2022, and we really don't want to be in that situation. So I would say those are. I would advise the government to reassess and to recreate a communication strategy that is more grassroots, more door to door, more community oriented. And I don't think these press conferences with these graphs and so on is very effective.
Yeah, in a fundamental way, they tend to be alienating, uh, I think.
Yeah.
It comes off too much as hard sell. It's an appeal to rationality, and it does not, which is important, but it does not, really get to the emotional side of the decision making of the ordinary citizen who is in
Yeah.
doubt or skeptical. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that is important too. And you mentioned you said they don't trust the system. What do you mean by system, and what do you think is the nature of this mistrust?
I think over the years has been, if you go back to the 1970s and 60s and so on, the medical profession was seen to be in a certain light, and people would put all their faith in a doctor. Even if you go back to read novels and so on, and you read about the role of doctors in villages and so on,
Yeah,
and that
doctors were
has
like
changed. And I
gods.
think
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that has changed, and people have for whatever reason, less trust now in medical science. There's been a whole anti-science movement coming out of the United States, and I think all these things filter down to people in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's a combination of several factors that have led. But I want to say, um, I have medical doctors in my family, and I'm sure you have medical doctors in your family. And Trinidad and Tobago has some of the finest medical doctors in the Caribbean. I mean, you go through the Caribbean and you talk about the level of specializations that we have here in Trinidad and subspecializations. We have one of the best medical professions in the Caribbean. Yet, people are skeptical, and it's not only in Trinidad. I mean, I travel throughout the Caribbean. It's also in other CARICOM jurisdictions. You have this hesitancy and this almost questioning the medical science and this reliance on what you call the social media doctors. So it's a challenge. I think it's really a communications challenge that the government has to chat across through.
Yeah, I'll just focus on one more thing before we get to energy. One of the problems is that we live in a knowledge world, and there's a lot of knowledge and accurate information, scientific data that is available. But together with that, there's a lot of misinformation. And because of the misinformation, you have a lot of ignorance and confusion. And then when you add to that ignorance and confusion finding their way in avenues of communication like social media, it becomes an impossible challenge in order to manage, and it's not just for us in Trinidad and Tobago, which is a small country, a small state, but it's a worldwide phenomenon that you are dealing with, in which there is really what you might say a political battle to weaponize these elements in the world system as part of an arsenal of ideological warfare.
Yeah,
You know?
and the interesting thing is, advanced mature democracies like Holland and Germany and so on are not exempt.
No, they are inundated with it, as a matter of fact, and it's almost like the freedom that democracy guarantees is its own source of vulnerability.
Correct. And interestingly, we just had the T20 World Cup in Abu Dhabi, and you notice that people in the stadia in Abu Dhabi were not wearing masks.
Yeah.
And when the cricketers were receiving their, having their press conferences, no mask. So I
Yes.
went on and I checked Abu Dhabi's vaccination rate, and it was about 95, 96% fully
Yes.
vaccinated.
Yes.
Now, the thing is, countries like Abu Dhabi are not really democracies. They are authoritarian states run by a royal family and so on. So you're quite right that sometimes democracy is its own worst enemy.
Yeah. Well, I
And
mean, I, I
I
think
think
I think the Prime Minister basically held out yesterday the promise of let's get vaccinated and then we can open the beaches and have a limited approach to carnival. But I think he gave enough of the precedents, the history, the examples of countries to say, well, if you all don't listen, we're going to have to make some impositions. And I can't
yeah.
say that I blame him for taking that kind of position. You know?
Well, it is going to be weighing heavily, and as we come into the economy, it's going to continue to be a drag on the economy into 2022.
Yeah.
Because you have, I mean, at the rate at which we're having these debts, um, it's going to continue to be a drag on commercial activity, even if the government doesn't return to the lockdown. People are going to withdraw. For example, I've taken a decision to reduce my public outings, my socializations, and so on. So that in itself, if you multiply that by thousands of people, is going to have a drag on
On
retail
the
and
economy,
commercial
of
activity.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people are cautious. And I don't understand how people will not respond to the losses, though. I mean, I have relatives, for instance, in which in one household of my relatives, they refused to get vaccinated. Three of them got COVID. All right, two were hospitalized and got off okay, and they are now all right. They have since gone and gotten vaccinated. But the mother in the home got so severely ill that she had to go to ICU and died. And I don't understand how something like that happening in a family does not affect the rest of the family to do something about their situation, or does not affect the neighborhood, because the neighborhood would know about it. And I think of the terrible unnecessary loss in that family, which, as I said, are blood relatives to me. And I find it hard to understand. Anyway, I'll give you one short comment and we go to energy now.
But I want to agree with yourself, and I want to agree with the Prime Minister. People need to get vaccinated, and the vaccine is not a cure. The vaccine is not going to guarantee that you don't get COVID, but the vaccine is going to reduce the probability that you will end up in ICU or you will end up dead.
Yes,
That is
of
what the
course.
vaccine does.
All right, this energy situation now, the big news in energy is really that we have signed this agreement with Shell. Government of Trinidad and Tobago has now signed with Shell, and that we now have access to the Manatee element of the Lauren Manatee field. And with access to that gas now, and with Shell willing to invest $1.8 billion, the minister said Shell will put up the entire investment. We're now in a situation where we can possibly see a significant amount of gas becoming available in 2025 if we are lucky, or 2026 if there is any problem going forward. How do you respond to something like that?
I think it's a very good development, and I think I agree with Minister Young that if it could have happened 2 years earlier, that would have been useful for Trinidad and Tobago. So Manatee, as you know, there's a long history with Loran Manatee that even it started with Patrick Manning, former Prime Minister Patrick Manning, and the late Hugo Chavez, going back to 2003. It had a history before that, but
Yes.
it really came onto the national radar in 2003, and it's been what has happened is that successive governments have attempted to develop that Loran Manatee field as a joint development with Venezuela. And because of the sanctions that have been put on Venezuela, of course, it made it almost impossible to do that as a joint development. So I think it was about 18 months ago, the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the government of Venezuela agreed that the two parties could develop their aspects of Loran Manatee by themselves. So Shell has 100% of that block. That's Block 6D. And Shell and the government of Trinidad and Tobago have opted to develop Manatee without the joint development approach with Venezuela. So it's important that that gas be produced as soon as possible. The Prime Minister said 2025, as early as 2025. So I interpret that to be 2026.
26,
It's,
me too.
it's a way out, and this is the challenge with the industry. Sometimes these developments take a while because you have to drill wells and install infrastructure and so on. But it is good news, and it is a significant amount of gas, relatively speaking. So it's going to give somewhere between 350 million cubic feet of gas per day to, I think, 700 million cubic feet of gas per day by, let's say, 2026. So that's That's good, but that's down the
Down the
road.
road. Yes,
That's
exactly.
and we have an immediate problem in the sector right now, which is we have a clear and present issue with a shortage right now. That is not going to go away, and the only we may get some relief in 2022, but it's not going to cure the problem in totality. We may get some more relief in 2023, but again, the problem of the shortage will more than likely persist until that manatee gas comes into production and until the gas from BHP. And I listened very quickly to the interview with the Minister of Energy, and he spoke about Woodside and the Bongos, Four Well, and BHP and that deep water. And he's quite right in that Woodside, we don't know what Woodside's appetite for producing that gas, which is located to the northeast of Tobago. And I see it's made its way into the THA election and so on. People have been WhatsApping me about the location of that gas. So that we don't know what Woodside's appetite for developing that gas would be. We certainly know that BHP, from my experience and of course from your experience in our dealings with BHP, we certainly remember that BHP, when these blocks were being signed between 2012 and 2014, BHP were very excited about those blocks and they were very prepared to invest in developing whatever would be found in those blocks. So, what has happened is that since 2014, BHP has been exploring that area to the northeast of Tobago, and they've started to discover significant amounts of gas ranging between 3.5 trillion cubic feet to about 5 trillion cubic feet. And what they've been doing for the last couple of months is what is called appraisal drilling. So they've done the exploration. So drilling usually happens in three phases: exploration, where you look for or you search for the hydrocarbon; appraisal, where you quantify with some degree of certainty what is available; and then finally development drilling, which is where you drill wells to produce. So from what Minister Young said, the appraisal drilling is going well. That's the same feedback I have had. And they are confirming the quantities of gas to the northeast of Tobago. The challenge with that development, of course, is where the gas is located. It's in very deep water. The water is in excess of 1,000 meters. So the cost of developing the gas, the amount of infrastructure required, and so on, is going to be expensive. So but I'm sure I feel positive that Woodside or BHP could overcome that engineering challenge and tie that gas into our grid and get it to market. I would hope by 2026. So
All
if
right.
Manatee comes into production around the same time Calypso comes into production, Calypso is BHP Woodside, then out in the next 5 years, we could see the prospect of gas production having a significant increase. But there's an immediate problem, which is manifesting itself, of course, with the Atlantic Train 1 and what's happening with Point Lisas and so on.
All right, we're going to get to that in a minute, but I want to deal with some broader issues too, which is that one of the problems with energy companies is that there is a tremendous pressure coming out of COP26 and basically the movement towards sustainable development, response to climate change, etc., against energy exploration. And many companies are taking the decision that they are going to explore where they are rather than go into new provinces. Will that work for us, you think, in terms of our gas strategy? In the case, let's say, of Woodside, who has made an acquisition here of BHP, would that kind of thinking urge them to pursue gas drilling and development in Trinidad and Tobago rather than look for that somewhere else? Or how would it work for us, you think?
I think what you're saying there is very, very serious and relevant. And there's a reaction to climate change across the board, and it varies from company to company. So you would find that the American oil and gas companies like Exxon and Chevron and so on, they have a certain reaction to this climate change agenda. But you would find that the European companies like BP and Shell and Equinor and so on, they have a different reaction. So what has been observed is that BP and Shell and and companies like Equinor from Norway, they are at the forefront of changing their business model to meet the challenges of climate change. You find that the American companies are getting there, but they're still wedded very heavily to exploration and production of crude oil and natural gas. The case of Woodside and BHP is, of course, directly related to this whole climate change agenda. BHP took a decision to jettison its petroleum arm
That's right.
specifically for that reason,
That's right.
because and Woodside has taken a decision to remain in that oil and gas space. So I think we have to, one of the things we have to accept is that this climate change movement is a global movement being driven heavily by the United Nations, by the European Union, and it's not going to go away. It's going to be the defining factor in how the world economy begins to reshape itself in the next 30 years, and that BP and Shell, who are the major investors in Trinidad and Tobago, who are the two largest producers of gas, they are becoming different companies. That doesn't mean that they're going to walk away from natural gas tomorrow, but their capital expenditure profile will be shifting more towards renewable energy,
Renewables, yeah.
more to, and they are both involved in a solar project in Trinidad, which we hope happens in 2022 and 2023. But we as a country have to accept that this is inevitable change that is on the horizon, and it is going to happen. You know, in within the course of this decade, we could see a decline happening in oil consumption, significant decline happening in oil consumption by the early 2030s.
All
So,
right.
so that those things have consequences for countries that produce oil and natural gas.
All right, we're going to have to break now for our sponsors to give their messages. But I want to ask you two questions which we will explore when we come back. And those two questions are, first of all, the deep water possibilities for companies like BP, Shell, new players in the energy sector who might want to come to Trinidad and Tobago, and the bid rounds that might be possible because of that. And the Minister of Energy, when he was here a few days ago, said that they are going to release a rider report which actually identifies the proven reserves that we have in a matter of days. So that is one issue. And the second thing that I want to explore with that is that if you take Manatee, if you take BHP Woodside continuing on the Tobago side of the deep ocean, and you take the deep water that is possible with companies like BP and other players who may come in if you have a bid round, we can have significant amount of gas that deals with all four trains of Atlantic LNG, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and addresses the other issues of the downstream as well. But we have a problem, as you have correctly identified, between now and 2025, 2026. How are we going to manage that? So I want to leave you with those two questions and we take a break now. This is Brighter Morning with Bo, and I'm Bo Tiwari. We're talking to Kevin Ramnarine, former Minister of Energy.
Welcome to Lifetime Solutions, where you can trust your roof to us. Our services include custom fabrication, steel framing, roofing installation, on-site roll forming, roofing maintenance and services. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionst.com. Lifetime Solutions. You can trust your roof to us. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com.
Welcome back. This is Brighter Morning with Bo, and we are talking to Kevin Ramnarine about energy-related matters. And here is Kevin now.
Hi, yes, I'm back. So we wanted to talk about that interregnum between now and 2026
Right.
and
And
what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think we are going to have to if you look at the story of gas production in Trinidad, and I don't want to go back to the beginning of time. We are we've created an industry that requires about 4.4 billion cubic feet of gas per day to run at full capacity. So if this country was producing 4.4 billion cubic feet of gas per day, every plant in Trinidad and Tobago, every LNG train, every power station would be satisfied, and there would be no quarreling, and everybody would be happy. We are now producing about 2.7 to 2.8 billion cubic feet of gas per day. So the consequence of that is that you've had plant closure. You've had the LNG Train 1 Atlantic closed down now almost a year. The Petrotrin refinery used natural gas that it bought from the NGC. That has closed down, but that's not the main reason why it closed down. And so what you've had is that you've had attrition taking place with plant closure, and you also have a number of plants not getting their full quota of gas. So I think Claire Fitzpatrick was on your program a few days ago, and she said that Atlantic trains 2 to trains 3 to train 4, 2, 3, and 4 were not running at full capacity. And my information is that they are running well below their full capacity and running somewhere in the region of 55% of what they could actually do. So this situation, and we could spend some time to pointing fingers about how we came here, but let's look forward. We are going to have some improvement in 2022, but it's not going to be where the Minister of Finance had projected it to be. So the Minister of Finance gave some numbers, some gas production numbers, and in my respectful view, those numbers, he's painted the correct trajectory, but the graph is going to be below what he's painted. And the reason for that is that we have a problem on the east coast of the east coast of Trinidad, in particular with our mature reservoirs. They are beginning to, the term in the industry is called water out, which means that they're beginning to draw water into the wells, and that water is causing the reservoir to lose its communication with natural gas and condensate. And the second thing happening is that we have a high degree of sand production taking place in some of these wells, and the wells are sanding up. So that is happening at an accelerated pace, particularly with BP's wells, and their production is certainly not where it was in 2015. So those things are contributing to this gas production problem we have. Even as we bring production, new production into the economy next year, it is simply not enough to counter that decline which is taking place in the mature fields. So we are going to have this problem for a while. The good news is that prices are very good for natural gas globally, and prices of ammonia and methanol are very good. I think the last I checked, methanol and ammonia prices were close to 800 US dollars per ton. So even though the companies are not getting the kind of natural gas they want, they are getting good revenue as a result of the high ammonia and methanol prices, and that's good for Trinidad and Tobago. But we are going to be in this situation, Dr. Tiwari, until we get that relief from Manatee and Calypso later on in the middle of the decade.
You see, but we have to close now, Kevin, because we're coming to the 7 o'clock news.
Hello?
But yeah, are you hearing me? We have to close now because we're coming to the 7 o'clock news. But we have to close. We cut.
Welcome to Lifetime Solutions, where you can trust your roof to us. Our services include custom fabrication, steel framing, roofing installation, on-site roll forming, roofing maintenance and services. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today, or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com. Lifetime Solutions. You can trust your roof to us. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today, or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com.
As businesses adapt to the new normal, let Magic Mist take care of your cleaning and sanitization needs with our COVID-19 BSCAI internationally certified technicians. With over 43 years of protecting the health of our nation, you can trust us to ensure your building remains safe, healthy, and functional. Give us a call today at 638-6675 or 332-5522. Magic Mist Services Limited, your total facilities management solutions provider.
News on MCTV.
This is the 7 a.m. news on MCTV and U975 Hot Like Pepper Radio. I am Andrew Chan. Good morning once again. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says humans are dominant because they do not give up, in the face of adversity. Speaking during his address to the nation last night, the Prime Minister listed nations around the world that had adopted restrictive or enforced COVID-19 health protocols, and warned the nation such measures could be enforced if deemed necessary.
If it ever gets to the point where we have to adopt any of these additional measures, it will not be because we are incompetent, arrogant, dictatorial, or anti-democratic. It would simply mean that our situation demands it, and we do live on planet Earth where COVID-19 is attempting to reign predominate. At no point do we intend to concede that this fight with this virus is beyond us and is therefore unwinnable. We will fight it and keep adjusting as required, even as the virus keeps mutating. The world has always been a dangerous place for Homo sapiens, the human species. But we did not become the dominant species by caving into challenges.
Dr. Rowley went on to suggest, based on COVID numbers, beaches could be open for Christmas.
Much as I would like to open up beaches and rivers, as I wanted to do a few weeks ago, the current situation militates against that. I did say earlier that I'm hoping that we could open beaches for Christmas. I'm still on that. I will give the numbers a couple of weeks to see where they are taking us, and if there is no further significant deterioration, we could start with early morning beach openings from, say, 5 a.m. to 12 noon. We should be able to have therapeutic dips at dawn without the parties at afternoon and sunset.
Medical practitioner Dr. Anirudh Mahabir thinks government is doing all they can in terms of vaccinating the population. Speaking with Chanel Alsran on the 6 p.m. news yesterday evening, he expressed the opinion that government may have to consider a vaccine mandate.
And to be quite honest, I think the government has been doing as much as they can. I mean, there remains a possibility that they can have a mandate, a vaccine mandate to force people. And I'm not sure how many people will object to that. But those of us who are vaccinated are very unhappy that we are being exposed by the unvaccinated. 90% of the people who are being infected are unvaccinated, less than 10% from vaccinated people. So I think that it shows that our problem is that our people are unwilling to get vaccinated.
Dr. Mahabir went on to explain that the crisis in the parallel healthcare system was an already existing shortage of trained ICU nurses.
You see, one of the things that we cannot manufacture, one of the things that we cannot make overnight is a professional who is trained in ICU.
The funeral professionals of Trinidad and Tobago are ready to assist the regional health authorities with regard to the increased challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking to MCTV, Chief Executive Officer of Belgrove's funeral home, Keith Belgrove, has responded to reports circulating about the nation's morgues being at full capacity.
The RHA system of using external funeral homes is in place, and that is working. And with the Association of Funeral Professionals establishing more capacity, then the need and the worry about proper and dignified, efficient storage totally disappears because it's going to be happening extremely professionally.
Earlier this week, Health Minister Terence D'Alsing said contingency plans are in place with the funeral operators to assist with the placement of deceased people in the morgues. Mr. Belgrove gave some insight into these contingency plans.
We are in the process of establishing a facility that will have a high capacity to support the RHAs with any form of overload that they may have, whether it is COVID-19, while the focus will be primarily COVID-19, persons who died of, we will also support them with any further overload. So the funeral home plus this facility, so any concern and worry about capacity of refrigeration and things like that will come to total zero.
In some international news now, a global shortage of fertilizers is driving up food prices and leaving poorer countries facing crisis. Svein Tore Holsether, who is the chief executive of Yara International, said higher gas prices were pushing up fertilizer costs and affecting food prices worldwide. Holsether said Yara had been forced to cut some production due to higher gas prices, which had led to shortages. The increase in gas prices in recent months has been triggered by several factors which have increased demand, including the unlocking of economies during the pandemic and reduced wind or rain for renewable power. The price of ammonia, which is the product Yara International produces more than anyone in the world, has gone up 255% in the last year. Holsether said the situation was very volatile and called for support and funding for the World Food Programme to avoid famine on a massive scale. And that brings us to the end of the 7 a.m. news on MCTV and U975 Hotlight Pepper Radio. Another newscast comes up at 8 o'clock, but it's back to Brighter Morning with Boo right now.
News on MCTV.
Welcome to Lifetime Solutions, where you can trust your roof to us. Our services include custom fabrication, steel framing, roofing installation, on-site roll forming, roofing maintenance and services. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com. Lifetime Solutions. You can trust your roof to us. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com.
As businesses adapt to the new normal, let Magic Mist take care of your cleaning and sanitization needs with our COVID-19 BSCAI internationally certified technicians. With over 43 years of protecting the health of our nation, you can trust us to ensure your building remains safe, healthy, and functional. Give us a call today at 638-6675 or 332-5522. Magic Mist Services Limited, your total facilities management solutions provider.
For the best prices and friendly service, check out Westby Supermarket today. Affordable prices just right for your pockets. Shop in clean, spacious, and well-stocked shelves for all your needs. At Westby's, we stock a wide variety of fresh fruits and vegetables, and also pre-packaged veggies for on-the-go meals, and not forgetting a wide range of meats for any occasion. Westby Supermarket, located in Dago Martin and Aruka, for all your shopping needs. Call them today at 632-8150 or 632-0009.
Yeah, we had a little hitch there before the news. We were talking to former Minister Kevin Ramnarine. So we'll take another 5 minutes and get to complete that particular conversation. Minister Ramnarine, you were talking about how you manage here between now and 2026, because that is the problem. You see, the government gives you the Ministry of Energy, Minister of Energy, and the Prime Minister give you the good news about where we are headed. And there is some good news. The Minister of Finance gives us wrong figures all the time. And his projections are always over-optimistic and not realistic. And the reality is that we've got to manage what we have. Now, the good news currently is that the price of oil and gas is high.
And ammonia. Ammonia, I just want to say, during the news...
some of the downstream products as well. I mean, that is also high. So how do we manage in the meantime between now and 2026? Because I don't think anything is going to happen in 2025.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say during the news, they spoke about the price of food globally, and it's going to affect us here. Ammonia prices, and we are a major exporter of ammonia. Ammonia prices are now, I said, 800 US dollars per ton. It's now 910 US dollars per ton in Europe, and it's about the same price in Tampa in the United States where our ammonia goes to. So that's going to have a big ripple effect on the price of food on your grocery shelf in Trinidad and Tobago. With regard to the economy and gas, we've lost about 29 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars in terms of real GDP in the last 6 years, which is equivalent to about 4.4 billion US dollars real GDP. That is about the size of the Barbadian economy. So it is as though Trinidad and Tobago has lost economic output equivalent to all of Barbados in the last 6 years. That's very frightening. Going forward, there is going to be some stabilization. There is going to be growth in the economy in 2022. I don't think it's going to be the 5.7% the IMF has forecasted. It may be somewhere in the region of 2 to 3%, but there will be growth next year. We will get growth, I think, again in 2023, but it's not going to get us back to where we were in 2015 in terms of real GDP, in terms of real output, and so on. So we are going to, Trinidad and Tobago is going to flounder until you get significant increases in natural gas production, which, as we pointed out, is 5-6 years down the road. In that interregnum between now and then, it is the ideal period to recalibrate, to diversify, to infuse this economy with the technologies. I think that we should be looking at cryptocurrency mining in Trinidad and Tobago as one of our angles for diversification. Are you still there, Dr. Tuari?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm listening to you. I don't know
So
much
those
about
are,
I don't know much about cryptocurrency, so I don't know if I could engage you on that. But but you are right about the diversification issue. It cannot be postponed anymore, and we have to have the investment outside of energy, even as we try to have bid rounds for new energy investment. And I find that the government is very lethargic when it comes to inviting and creating the conditions for investment and entrepreneurial activity outside of energy.
yeah, I think that is where we have to excite our local private sector. I think that is where we have to excite the non-petroleum, non-energy foreign direct investors to come into Trinidad. But I don't see the engagement between this government and the private sector as being where it ought to be to excite them, to get them investing. I was in Guyana 2 weeks ago, and I had dinner one night before I left with a big group of Trinidadian businessmen who were all there to do exactly what we would like them to do in Trinidad. And the reason, of course, is that they are excited about the opportunities that are presenting themselves in Guyana and Suriname, and they are being welcomed, and they are being facilitated in terms of meeting with ministries and meeting with the leadership and so on of the country. And the country, Guyana and Suriname, are open for business. And I think that level of excitement is what I would like to see in Trinidad for our private sector. You know, I have a very good friend who I consider one of the smartest persons I know. He lives now in Canada, Trinidadian. And he says whenever he goes to a country, he always asks people, what excites you? What is there exciting happening in the economy? And if you ask people in Trinidad that question, I don't know what reply you will get. But if you had asked that question, let's say 20 years ago in Trinidad, people might have said, well, Atlantic LNG is exciting. So we need to get our private sector engaged and investing in Trinidad. And as you said, the ecosystem for that to happen is not necessarily there. We have to address this whole issue of ease of doing business. We have to address the whole issue of e-government, make more of government services available online. I want to commend the Ministry of Finance this morning for the property tax online form. I used it. It's very easy to use, and it's very simple. And so I think that we have been making some gains, but we need to move towards this position where we get the private sector excited about investing in Trinidad and Tobago again, because they are moving out and investing in Guyana, Suriname, Jamaica, Barbados, and so on, because it's part of a common market.
Yeah. Anyway, we've got to close this discussion. As usual, we will try to have you on again because this is an important discussion. I'm going to try to talk to representatives of Shell next week. And we have to keep the energy discussion going because we've got to get that energy side going to capitalize on what is available in terms of natural gas in Trinidad and Tobago, or else time may run out on us on two fronts. One would be the climate change agenda issue, and the other one is simply the decisions by companies that they cannot proceed in that direction anymore. And the second thing would be the diversification agenda. I mean, the participation rate. I had Roger Hussein here yesterday. He said the participation rate for labor is now 54%. I mean, we can't continue like that. So anyway, we will close this discussion now, and we'll talk another time. Kevin,
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for being on the program, and have a good day today. This is Brighter Morning with Bo. I am Bo Tiwari, and we will take a commercial break now. And when we come back, we go to our next guest, who is the Superintendent of Police in charge of gender and child-related issues.